HO meeting's about ready to start.
Good evening. This is a special meeting for the South Haven City Council. It's Monday, September the 28th, 2020. I'll call this meeting to order. We will have a section where we have citizens in the audience who are able to call in for comments. That is, the number is 637-0777. Again, 637-0777. We will run into that in just one moment here. We will begin tonight with a roll call.
Jeff Arnold.
Here.
Chris Campbell.
Here.
Joe Reeser.
Here.
Steve Schlack.
Here.
George Sleeper.
Here.
Letitia Wilkins.
Here.
Scott Smith.
Here. So at this time, citizens in the audience will be allowed to call on items not on the agenda. The agenda tonight is very simple. We are doing interviews for our city manager. So if it's a topic other than that, you're free to call in 637-0777. Thank you, everybody, for getting here tonight. Happy fall. I'll wait for my designated timekeeper to give me the wink wink that we have no phone calls. Clear. Okay. No phone calls. Very good. So we are now at the point in time in this meeting where we're going to be interviewing candidates. However, we've had a change since this morning. I will let Ms. Kim Wise fill us in on that, our HR director.
Members of council, this weekend I heard from candidate Tim Wolf, and he expressed that he was very sorrowful, but he wasn't going to be able to join us tonight in person for the interview. Something of a personal nature came up, so he wasn't going to be able to join us in person, so we discussed possibly doing a virtual interview. This morning he emailed me and said with what's going on with him personally, he's not able to go forward with that, so he has asked to withdraw from consideration. So I wanted to give you an update on that.
Okay, very good. So for this council, what we're going to do is we will interview Kate as planned. And at the end of that, we can have a discussion about the desires of this council as far as going forward with Kate. As you know, we narrowed this down from a large pool of candidates. The interview committee had 7. From there, it was narrowed down to 2. The plan was 2 interviews tonight. Clearly, this changed. So let's have Kate interview as planned, and after that, we can have a discussion. Good evening, Kate.
Good evening. I brought
Good to
my own
see you.
water.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got a list of questions, but I hear you have a presentation for us. So are you game to start with kind of you present, and then we'll fire questions at you?
Sure, absolutely. We can do that. And I didn't know if it was required, but I thought it would be a good idea to put some of my thoughts together on what I have seen in the term that I've been sitting as interim.
Perfect.
Okay, well, I think we'll put it on this screen, perhaps. Might be a bit tough for everyone to watch, but I did email this over.
Can't quite hear you.
It sounds like maybe the projector's warming up also. So,
Oh, is it?
and maybe I'm hearing things.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll wait for IT then.
Nope. Yep.
Behind
Right
you.
behind you.
It's right behind you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, both.
Great. So we'll go to the next slide, which I wanted to just think about a couple of the top priorities that I see that we have in the city. And my 3 right now are housing, economic development, and inclusivity. For housing, and it may be a little difficult to read some of these, but primarily we do need to continue the advancement of the redevelopment of the Overton site. That is a unique property that, one, the city does control, and it's very well located in a neighborhood that has a number of amenities. And it's in the very definition of a transition zone. It's the confluence of 3 different zoning districts. There's just a lot of opportunity in this zone, in this in this property, so I think we should continue on that. We've already finished the first round of the evaluation committee. You should be seeing a memo of that at your next city council meeting. Pursuing the development of missing middle housing, that's something that's in our master plan. It definitely calls for it. And I don't know what that looks like, but we definitely need to keep going forward on that. And we also need to focus on attracting workforce housing, multifamily, and senior housing. We need to also encourage redevelopment in the central business district for residential living above commercial uses. We have a lot of capacity in the downtown, and a lot of that is not being used. So I think that there's space there, and it would also help, I think, your downtown, if people are living in your downtown, that grows more commercial uses and needs. Pursuing infill development of neighborhoods and planned unit developments. Continue implementation of the short-term rental program while staying abreast of developing legislation at the state level. There's still a movement at the state level on regulating or deregulating or taking the regulation out of local government units' hands of short-term rentals. And again, collaborate with surrounding townships and housing commission leadership on new housing and redevelopment projects. We did do the joint meetings with South Haven Charter Township, and we just need to continue those partnerships. Moving on to another priority would be economic development. In our strategic plan for economic development, we did list that developing year-round economy is pretty vital for stabilizing our economy. We have an overabundance or reliance on tourism and how to buffer that out. As we've seen with this year and a little bit last year, high water is just killing a lot of businesses that have focused on the tourism business. Supporting the business community with appropriate resources. There's many businesses around here that are still looking to expand or planning on future expansion. How can we best help them? What resources can we bring to bear? Fostering opportunity and for synergy between businesses and services. There's many times when this business needs space but doesn't know where to look for it. We just talked with this business, and they have space, but they don't know where to find a person to fill it. We can sometimes be that conduit. Continuing strong strategic partnerships with the Chamber of Commerce, the South Haven Convention and Visitors Bureau, public schools like Michigan College and Van Buren County. We have partners everywhere, and just knowing how to create those partnerships, foster those relationships, helps everybody. Developing plans to meet increased need for internet connectivity for homes, especially with this year with COVID-19 and so much teleworking. It has become apparent that while we're considered a well-served area inside the city, areas outside of it may not be. Of course, while that may not be an intermediate need for the city of South Haven, our schools are located inside the city, and maybe some of our students are not. We need to find ways to make sure that everyone can get connected. It also may bring more people living in the South Haven area, shopping at South Haven stores, if you have more connectivity. We've already kind of started talks about doing a 425 agreement of the M140 corridor, so a partnership with the South Haven Charter Township. A couple of different reasons why we would do this expansion is to, one, improve an entry point into the city, beautify the area, use our zoning to help clean up any problem properties, but also using our, commercial rehab, if we can extend that area, to motivate and encourage more redevelopment. Pursuing workforce training, mentoring programs with educational partners, South Haven Public Schools, the Vocational Center, and Lake Michigan College. The public school system has some really neat folks. We have a robotics team, and we have a lot of opportunity to foster up-and-coming talent and also get them excited about staying here with local communities, or local businesses, rather. And we also need to keep in mind that we still have the all-season site that right now the redevelopment is kind of up in the air. Not really sure who's interested in the project right now, but this portion of our waterfront is a significant portion, but besides that and the Michigan Maritime Museum expansion, we have the opportunity to be a partner of some really key development. inclusivity is the third top priority. We have seen this year alone just a lot of different changes and a different attitude taking the country by storm. We need to understand that there is ways that we need to be more inclusive, more respectful, and making sure that every voice is heard. We need to foster a culture, a community culture, and a culture inside the city that provides full access to resources, that promotes fair treatment and equal opportunity, that respects everyone, that creates opportunities to share in the decision-making process, that strives for greater accessibility, that values diversity, and encourages equal representation. I've noted some other challenges that we have been facing that we have talked about. High water challenges. We are still going to see impacts from high water conditions. While they are saying that the water levels are going down, they can't tell you how fast that will be. We could be looking at sustained high water levels for at least a year, maybe more, depending on what the conditions are. Municipal budgeting must stay fluid and conservative to be prepared for unexpected expenses or repairs related to high water. And we will continue to seek assistance, and if there's any grant funding or any kind of resources coming from the states or federal governments to minimize our effects. Of course, our other challenge that is going on today, as we all know, is COVID-19. So since March, we've had to change the way we do business. And, well, we're always looking for another round of new executive orders that are going to change how we've been doing things, and we have to be adaptive and ready to change or pivot on how we're going to respond. And while most businesses have been able to open, we do have to acknowledge that many activities are still closed and many venues and businesses are not. There are some that are still unopened. So again, planning to stay flexible and responsive to state and federal regulations. And also, we plan to continue to track pandemic-related costs. There has been some programs that are coming out of the state and possibly the federal government that may give us some relief. We were pleased to have done some hazard pay reimbursements that we've received from the state. Again, this is a program that came from the state. We submitted the documentation for, and we were able to pass that through to our employees that qualified for it. Collaboration opportunities. We have many authorities, and we want to continue working with them, and by using all of them, we get to advance. South Haven Area Emergency Services, South Haven Area Water and Sewer Authority. They'll be very key partners when we look at redevelopment because of water and sewer connection fees. Recreation area, Pilgrim Haven, the newly acquired Porter property, 14th Avenue, and the South Haven Joint Building Authority, which is currently looking at a developer for the $2.3 million renovation project. So, also we'll need to keep abreast of city boards and commissions and utilizing the Brownfield Redevelopment, Local Development Finance Authority, and Downtown Authority, which, as you know, Center Street was a partnership of many of those different authorities. Funding opportunities, again, we are very aggressive in pursuing grants and other funding opportunities for capital improvement projects for water, sewer, electric, parks, streets, and marinas, but also plan to be fiscally responsive to a budget deficit, as well as any decrease in revenues that are caused by COVID-19 or high lake levels. We are going to be responsive to what comes down from the state, and if the state decreases our state sharing funding. And finally, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight to be a candidate for the position of the city manager. And having learned this organization for the last 5 years under the previous city manager, I feel that I'm uniquely qualified to continue working on the priorities that have been set by this council. This year has been very challenging. It has been a banner year for many people, but unfortunately very tragic for some. And I just want to continue leading this organization and using my skills and abilities that I've developed over my professional career to benefit this community. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Kate. So I get to kick it off tonight with questions, and I think you'll end up with about 2 from each of us. to start out, if you'll just run through your resume. I know you did this before, but just for the sake of the entire council, and just, if you want to highlight, what things you think would be of relevance for us that would kind of share your unique attributes relative to the city manager position, and I think you just stated it, but again, maybe why you desire to have this position after this year.
Sure. Well, I guess my background has been in public service as well as service to the city. I've had a number of years intervening, but many of you may not know that I've had a number of positions in the city over the course of my lifetime. I've worked at the marinas as a dock hand when I was a teenager. I've worked at the beach patrol, so that interperiod between when we ceased the lifeguard program and then we went to no lifeguards, there was a period of time, I think it was a year or two, that we actually had beach patrol, and I was one of those few people. I've worked at the police station as a 911 emergency dispatcher, and I was there for about 5 years, working 12-hour shifts, many times on the swing or the midnight shift. So I was also, they call it the turnkey, so you have to, watch watch the prisoners and do lean work, so you have to have a bit of confidentiality, and of course, do 911 medical dispatching, which is, if a person says they can't breathe, how to administer CPR over the phone, those kind of things. And then I decided to go to law school and went through that very challenging program, if you haven't heard. And then I became a criminal defense attorney. When I came out of law school in 2008 and took the 2009 bar, it was a very difficult time to seek employment. No one was hiring, and I was very lucky to get a clerkship with a local boutique law firm in Lansing and started doing criminal defense with them. And it was a solo practiceship. I did of counsel with them, so I wasn't an attorney on their payroll, but they would, share work with me. And I did criminal defense work for about four or 5 years. It is very challenging, and you do see and work with some very challenging people. Many people who have financial difficulties. Obviously, indigent defense is what I did. Indigent defense, so you're dealing with people who cannot afford a lawyer. You're dealing with people who may have mental health issues. Many people who just had a lot of challenges in their life. As an indigent defense lawyer, I was assigned, between 300 and 400 clients a year. This was a misdemeanor contract, so really you're looking at charges that were 1 year or less imprisonment, so there was your gamut. And I did defense of ordinance and statutes. So I had the opportunity to work with a lot of folks who, that was my job, is to make sure that they had a voice in a system that sometimes didn't really, you have an adversary relationship, you have a prosecutor and defense, and that was my job, is to make sure that they had a voice in the system. So, and how I think that relates here is ultimately what I'm doing here is customer service, and I'm trying to make sure that every need is being met. Now, that's a laudable goal, but I'm leading the ship of many people who do many different jobs. I don't know everything, but I don't really have to. What I do have to do is make sure that the team is working.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you. I will pass to
Mr.
Jeff.
Mayor, can I ask a question to you? We have set questions we've been given, and that's good. It's hard to ask questions for interviews. It's hard to ask good questions. But Kate gave a very good presentation. I'd like to have the opportunity to ask a couple questions pertaining to her presentation. Is that possible?
Why don't we get through our questions, and let's see where
That may be at the end?
Yeah, and let's
Okay.
sort of see where that takes us. How's that sound? Some of them may get answered, so.
Okay, and I got the second question. Please describe a complicated problem you had to deal with in your career. How did you go about solving the problem?
So I'm going to guess you want a specific example, or do you want, like, how I solved it?
Well, it sounds like kind of both.
Okay. I guess I would kind of reach back to my legal experience. I've had a number of clients who had, I had a number of clients, but in particular, I had a client who was charged with an assault, and we had to figure out how to present the best defense. And one of the hard things about being an indigent defense attorney is that you really don't have any money. It's not like you're a prosecutor and you get to say, hey, police officer, go get this investigation done for me. You have to get the money from the court to go and investigate. So I made a motion to ask for, an investigator to be appointed and how much funding, and that was a challenge, and I had to do quite a bit of legwork. So really, what it came down to is knowing that you have a finite number of resources. I had to check with a number of county offices to see what is the process, how much money is it likely to be, who is the investigator who's likely to be appointed, what is the process for that. So the complicated process ended up being that it sounds very simple to just go to court, make a motion, tell the judge this is what I want, and of course the prosecutor gets to weigh in and say, no, you don't get to have that, or can you tell me what your investigative strategy is? And my response is, no, I'm not going to give you what my defense will be. But ultimately what it was is I looked at the problem, broke it down into what was needed, looked at what had to happen to get to the results, investigated that, looked at our resources, and applied to those resources. So.
Okay.
Kate, I've got the next question. This position requires someone who is strong and a strong and effective communicator. Tell us about your experience with public speaking, dealing with the media, and writing professional documents.
I consider myself a very effective communicator. And you were asking for the public media, public speaking, and writing public documents.
Yes.
So I'll address each one of those independently. Public speaking is a very hard thing for many people. You can see it many times when people come to council. It's very hard to stand up there, and even for 5 minutes just to speak, and you get nervous. In law school, one of the worst things that ever happened is when you get called on in a classroom of 300 people, of people who know exactly what's going on, or people who don't have a clue what's going on. But what does happen is you're made to stand up in front of everyone, and then the professor makes you look like an idiot. So the first thing you have to learn is that you may sound like an idiot, but you have to get through it and establish your facts, get through your argument, and make your reasoning, hold your composure. And that has been, I've had some practice. You may or may not know, but I've been part of the community theater group, Our Town Players, for a number of years. I don't really act anymore. I have a hard time missing, I've missed a few cues, but I prefer the background work more. But public speaking and then, of course, going through law school, you definitely learn how to hold your composure and present a cogent argument. That has helped me also, actually, as a trial lawyer, to think on your feet and adapt and go along. As with the public media, or rather the media, I would say that I've had more experience here in talking with the media in the last 5 years over the number of things that we've had come up this summer in particular, as well as earlier this year when we had a lot of focus on the high water. We had a lot of media in town talking and just doing stories. I think this year I've been contacted with media outlets out in Seattle, east side of Michigan. It's been a never-ending kind of contact with media. And what I would say with that is to understand what is the message you're trying to get out, what are you trying to hit, and of course trying to hit the policies that perhaps this council has talked about. So for the high water, it was very easy. We put together a very comprehensive PowerPoint that has been shared with a countless number of people. So you want to get your message and then share that message. And I believe the third one was documents, creating public documents. Again, law school, it's been a great education to have that and to be an effective writer. It's definitely trained me to be a lot more sparse than many people maybe want, but I prefer to be very factual rather than being very effusive.
Thank you.
What's the advantage? Why is sparse better than, you're saying?
Just want to be more
Get to the point.
concise.
You just get to the point.
Less is better, you know?
Yeah, that was very different from what I learned in undergraduate, which is if you can make a 5-word sentence, you can make a 10-word sentence. So now it's back to 5.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Sorry. Katie, in terms of your career, what has been your greatest success?
My greatest success, I would say, it sounds kind of trite, but completing law school and passing the bar. Law school was a very different mindset, and it was very difficult for me to kind of find my groove. The first year was pretty much horrible. As a first-year law student, you were completely thrown into reading 50 pages for one class, and if you're taking 4 classes, that's quite a bit of reading every day. And it was tough to get to that mindset, but really what you are learning is you're learning a changing of your mind. You're changing how you think, what you're thinking about, and how you analyze. It ended up being, by the end, it was fantastic in the fact that I really understood what they were asking of me and what was being what I was being trained to do. And the greatest success was when I opened that letter and found that I had passed the bar the first time and I would never have to take it again. That I can't tell you the relief. So that's my greatest success.
Kate, regarding your management philosophy and style, how do you plan to engage with the city's leadership team and staff?
I very much believe that you should emulate the style and emulate the values that you want your people following you to do. I'm very much lead from the front and set the example. Working under Brian, I really very much admired his servant leadership, which is trying to promote and raise up your employees and offering them ways to better them and be more engaged. With staff, I like to think that one, making sure that morale is good and finding out ways that we can be better, understanding that there are department heads and relying on them to do what they do best, and understanding that they are, managing folks underneath them. But also knowing that when as I set the example and I look to everyone else around me, they're going to see that I am a leader and that they are, I'm looking to them to bring up, to meet the bar. And as for city council, it's a relationship that obviously this will be my first time being in this seat, but watching how Brian made individual relationships with each one of you, and then also got you together so that you can make your decisions when you need to make that. That's my plan. Also, I believe very much that being a professional, being respectful, and when I don't know something, saying I don't know it.
Thank you.
Give us an example of a time when you stepped out of your comfort zone to work or help someone of a different culture or background than your own.
As an indigent defense attorney, I had many clients who were either recent immigrants, who were brought here either as refugees. In particular, I had a woman that I was working with who was alleged to have committed an assault against her domestic partner. She was not yet a citizen, and if she was convicted of the charge that she was charged with, her ability to become a citizen was jeopardized. And then added to that, she did not speak English, and trying to find a translator for her particular dialect was very difficult. So I was in a position of trying to one, convey legal concepts to her, as well as getting her story to present and start forming a defense was very difficult. Trying to line up the resources to get just the normal things done. And when I say normal, you meet, you discuss, you talk about the options, you talk about what, do we go to trial? What's the plea? What's the complications of the plea to your situation? All that was now complicated, and trying to find the resources and overburdened judicial system was very tough. Ultimately, we were able to, through legal aid in Michigan State University, locate a translator, and we met several times to formulate a defense, to talk about what are the ramifications. I also was able to reach out to the immigration, I think they had like a center where you can go and get immigration help, to collaborate with an immigration attorney to look at what other charges or an alternative plea that she could work with, so that did not jeopardize her bid for citizenship. And she pled to a lesser charge that did not jeopardize her bid for immigration. We also had the opportunity to get her connected with one of the Catholic charities to get more resources, because she couldn't be staying with the other person, so got her set up in a different situation. So I consider that a win. It was a pretty tough case.
Thanks. All right, Kate. This question is from the public. The city of South Haven has various nonprofit, civic, and service organizations who give so much to the community. What types of nonprofits have you worked with in the past? How would you, as the city manager, work with these organizations to strengthen our community?
Currently, I work with two nonprofits right now. I'm the president of Our Town Players, which is a community theater group, and I'm also the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, which is a nonprofit for business. Well, rather, I'm not really actually sure. I believe it's a nonprofit, but really, you're not trying to make a profit. You're trying to foster the business community. I believe very, very strongly in the nonprofits that we do. It gives a lot of color and depth to our to this city. We have nonprofits that focus on music and education and the arts, and service organizations like Rotary and Kiwanis. It just adds more to the fabric of the community. I'm very open to working with all the nonprofits. I know that many, like the South Haven Community Foundation, has been instrumental in trying to help focus on projects that could not otherwise be funded. They've helped the splash pad. They've helped other things. They've helped with large civic and philanthropic. Thank you. Also Shout for South Haven do a lot of good things around the city, and they're always trying to figure out or put in a new statue or a new clock or the bridge at the new Shout Park. Working with these folks, anybody who wants to come forward is a big part of what I learned under Brian Dissett, was that there's people here who want to give, and how can we best help to marry their gift with what we need.
Thank you.
All right, Kate, next one's me. As you might have become aware over the last few months, the city manager role is one that requires a great deal of multitasking. Could you share with us an example of the time when your workload was a little heavy and how you manage that extra workload? Please.
Sure. I would say the last couple of months have been pretty challenging. I've been trying to, for the most part, delegate away some of my duties as an assistant city manager, but that's not always possible. So I've had the responsibility of obviously taking on what Brian does, and then doing sometimes some of the other stuff that I would do as the assistant. The biggest thing you can do when you're feeling a little overwhelmed is ask for help and to delegate. There's many talented, very experienced people that work for the city, our department heads. We've built a very good team here. And by asking those people to, hey, can you take this on, or I need some help with this, or can you just get this done for me? It's asking for help when you know you can't get it all done, and you don't want to let a project falter or wither because you can't get to it. So what you do have to do is ask for help, delegate out, or ask someone to pick up the slack when you cannot.
Thank you.
My turn again.
Okay?
Describe a time when a customer, coworker, council member, or boss was upset, and how did you manage the situation? And I guess it says or, but I want to put you on the spot, and if you could talk about a customer and a coworker for sure, and then, because I think that's a lot of the job, and so we'd like to know.
Okay. Sure. For customers, we had, I guess, really everyone's a customer when you come to the city. That's what we do as public service, customer service, rather. When we had to close the marinas, we had a lot of upset people who planned on being here. Even though we made that decision pretty early, we had a number of people who, that's where they come. This is where they stay. If they don't have their boat here, then they really can't come to South Haven and be here for the time that they wanted. So with that, first things you want to do is let them listen, let them tell you why they're upset, that they're frustrated, let them lay out the entire problem, let them vent. And then for me, for that one, it was pretty easy in the fact that this is really much tied to safety. It's a dangerous situation. Planning on doing a renovation. I can't have the boat there, I can't have you there, so you can explain all that, but really you gotta let them vent that out. Just get it all out there. For a coworker, I've been frustrated sometimes when, when I've been frustrated, or when we had, can you repeat that part of the question?
Yeah, describe a time in when a coworker has been upset with you, and then how did you manage the situation?
When I worked at the law firm in Lansing, I worked under the main partner, and I was tasked with preparing an appeal to the Court of Appeals regarding a sentencing issue for a client. It was a young man who had been charged with a very severe crime at the age of 14, and was sent to prison, not to judicial or juvenile detention facility. So he was sent to main population, and we were working on appeal to see if we could either lessen his sentence or change that. I determined that there was a remedy, but it was not going to be the remedy he wanted, and he was also very upset that he thought that there was a timing issue that had been missed by me. Unfortunately, by the time I had come onto the case, a lot of the appeals that could have preceded the one that I did had not been met, so those were off the table. But trying to, I guess, clear up the frustration on him. One, obviously let your boss vent and tell you all the things you did wrong, but more importantly, we have a job to do. Once we get that out of the way, let's work together to advance. We have our client. There are things we can do, so let's work on them. So very much, I understand your position, let you vent, but let's put it aside, be professional, and work forward towards the goal.
Kate, the city council's top 3 priorities for this fiscal year are, number 1, high water levels, number 2, housing options for the missing middle and workforce, and 3, economic development efforts. Tell us about your experience, if any, addressing these types of issues, or how you would work with staff and council to tackle these priorities.
Well, I may have prepared a little bit for this one, so. With the high water, I think that we continually should look for any kind of funding from the state or the federal government that may help buttress city responses, such as the HESCO barriers were very helpful to come from the Corps of Engineers. And I have to say that by getting our senators down here and to look at the problem was very helpful. So looking at those avenues for relief is going to be high on my priority list. Also, we have the opportunity, I'm not sure if any of you know, that we're working with the South Haven Charter Township as well as with Casco to do a joint planning exercise to help build resilient coastal communities. We were hoping to kick that off sometime this summer, but with COVID, we thought to push it off. It looks like because we're still kind of confined with meetings that we may do a kickoff virtually. So planning for resilient coastal communities and doing that as a joint partnership with the two neighboring government units that to our north and our south, I think could, one, strengthen the area that we have and how we respond to planning on the lakeshore. With housing, we've been doing a lot of work on the Overton parcel. We've had 3 meetings with the evaluation committee. It looks like very promising that we're going to keep that development going. Housing is going to be a challenge for this community. I mean, we have a number of factors. It's a very desirable community. People are moving here as retirees, but yet families are not moving into the city necessarily. So we have to find ways to entice them here and working on attraction to bring all sorts of housing projects and housing typologies here. And I think with housing, you also in my mind, it's so multifaceted. There's so many different reasons why housing is a challenge, but with the Overton as well as the master plan and looking at some of the different strategies that we could do, we have a lot of options, I think. And using consultants like Ryan Kilpatrick, this is what he is focused on, really helps you get subject matter expertise when you may not have it. With economic development, I believe that, I've been in the economic development seat for about 5 years trying to get better, more connections here, working on infilling in different organizations and different business types. Attracting businesses. We do know of several different projects that are growing around the city right now where there's possible expansion. And I'm not sure how much to say because I'm not sure if they're ready to talk about it, but we know of at least 2 companies that are looking at an expansion. But this year's COVID has really kind of delayed a few things. I think economic development really depends on partners. So working with the chamber, working with the school system, working with all those different those units that would help kind of entice, create mentorships, create partnerships with LMC for any kind of training. We got to keep doing that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Kate, tell us about your experience working with boards, committees, and/or councils. How did you build strong relationships with these crucial partners?
I've had the opportunity to sit on or serve as staff liaison to the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Construction Board of Appeals, the Local Development Finance Authority, Brownfield Authority. I also sit on the County Brownfield Authority as the city's representative or as a South Haven representative. And I think the biggest thing you have to do is, one, understand who they are. Everyone's different. Everyone has a different way they're coming at a problem. They have a different perspective on things. But that's what makes it rich. That's what makes boards so unique and why they're so desirable. You may not always get 100% or everyone on the board to be unanimous in their decision-making, but it does foster good debate and good discussion of a topic if people are asking questions. As a staff liaison, I've always wanted to give my boards the most information they need, or the information they need, or rather any questions they may have so they can make their decision. I don't think that city council is any different than any other board except for the fact that instead of being appointed, you are elected. So in my mind, before I even got to this position, Brian said, who was the boss? They were the boss. Well, he was my boss, but what do you need to help serve your electorate? That's the biggest thing. How do I best give you the information, answer your questions, and help your representative, that you represent, the people you represent?
Kate, tell us about a time that you made a mistake at work or experienced a failure. What happened and how did you handle it?
One of the first times, as I took over the planning commission from the outgoing zoning administrator, is I think we had something come up that had to have a public notice. And, well, if you don't get your public notice in on time and you don't have the 15 days that's required by state statute, then really you can discuss it, but you can't take the proper action on it. I think that was one of the first times where I was like, oh, man, that was pretty important, because now you've delayed a project that needed that time frame to go forward on. So what I tried to do after that is, when I realized what a big mistake that was and how costly it was to the project timeline, is worked with the staff to set reminders, and now we have a chart that says, here's when the date, the legal notice is due, this is when the meeting date is, this is the absolutely last date that the developer or the person for the project application had to get their stuff in on time. So we set up 3 different timelines and calendar notices so that we don't miss another newspaper deadline again.
Thank you.
Kate, tell us about a time when you had to address a coworker, council person, or subordinate's behavior on something that you did not agree with. How did you handle it?
I very much believe in being a professional, respectful person. I think that's the biggest thing that I have. If a person can't be professional, in my mind, it looks down on the organization. It doesn't represent this organization well. I had the chance, I had a coworker who did not represent themselves well in the public. It was, it may not have seemed like a lot to somebody, but when it was reported to me that this behavior had occurred, I talked to their department head and said, this happened. There was another employee that had talked about it, told me what had happened, was looking for some advice. And I said, the first thing we have to do is make sure that when you're wearing the city's emblem, or even when you're not wearing the city's emblem and you're out in the community, you represent this organization. Your behavior represents us, whether you're on the clock or you're not. I expect that you will be respectful at all times, regardless of whom you're talking to. And the coworker and the department head addressed the behavior with the person. I don't think she was written up or anything, but one, I believe in clear expectations. I also think that you have to let people know when this isn't the right thing and here's what you should be doing instead. But being professional, being respectful is very important.
So in conclusion, you would talk to them first before taking punitive action?
Yes, but in this particular scenario, one, I didn't witness it, but more importantly, I also think that how it gets reported and who it gets reported to is very important. In this situation, it was more important for the department head to discuss it, but talking with the person who talked to me and then the department head, we worked out a strategy on how they should address her behavior.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kate. I have the last question, and I think the most important question.
Okay.
Please tell us why we should hire you as our next city manager.
Well, I'm very pleased, I'm happy to be back in South Haven. Many of you may not know, but I grew up here, went to South Haven High School, stayed around here, came back after college, And then that's when I worked the 911 dispatcher job. And I still had that tear that I wanted to go out, make my mark in the world. And for a time I did. I think that being an attorney, being a trial lawyer is a pretty big deal, and I was very happy to do it. But I did get to a point in my life where I wanted very much to be back here. And returning back to your hometown and then finding a job such as this is very rewarding. The ability to continue to do public service, in my mind, this is the ultimate public service. I think it's a calling, and I think that there's not many people who want to do that, but I very much want to do that. I know it sounds kind of lame, but I come from a long line of family members who are in public service. Many of you may not know, but my dad was the fire marshal here for over 20 years. My brother is a firefighter in Kentwood, and my brothers and my family members have been in the fire service. So public service is, I guess, the family business, and I'm very honored to come back and be able to work in my hometown. And I think that serving the city, serving our residents is a very worthwhile adventure. And I call it an adventure because every day is different. And for a person who likes to learn different things and see different things, and every day has to be a little different, this is pretty neat.
Well stated. So I think, Joe, you had 2 questions?
Yes. Kate, I think one of your real strengths are you know what's important in this city. And your slide presentation, when you talked about housing, economic development, inclusion, hit it right on the head, in my opinion. I just had a couple, just wanted to dive into it just a little bit more. Under housing, and you talked about short-term rentals, tell me what's working right now and what's not working.
This year is very different than any other year, so it's kind of hard to say what's working, what's not. We halted inspections for, I want to say, we halted them in March, and we just now started them back up in Labor Day. I think they work for a number of reasons. One, you're looking at to make sure that a place is safe for people who may not understand where the emergency egresses are, if there's GFCI outlets. And GFCI outlets may seem very low, but obviously that's what we're installing in a marina for almost $3 million. It's important to have safe environments. And I think that the inspections, I think, also kind of create this culture that, hey, you know, we're looking out. So I do think that they work. Enforcement is always going to be a challenge. Enforcement is a challenge for any police agency or code enforcement, but we can always do better.
And I agree. Can I ask one more question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Under inclusion, what do you mean by value diversity? And then I have a follow-up question.
I think that you can value diversity and welcome it in your community because we're all part of the same community. My understanding and my experiences are going to be different from somebody else's. Those other people have different experiences, bring a different perspective and a different background and a different way of looking at things. We need those different perspectives to help round out our community and to making sure that we're representing and hearing from everyone.
And the last question probably is the toughest. Letitia on City Council here, myself, represent Ward 1. And we have more minorities and more diversity probably in our ward. And it has been, for a lot of residents have come forward and have said, especially minorities, that they don't feel as welcome and they don't feel as included in this city as they would like. And I think we've discussed it. What can we do? What can you do to change that, whether it be a perception or a reality in this city?
It's hard to change perceptions without actually talking with people, and that's, I think, the biggest thing that we need to do is have more discussions. Talking with people and having those communication, having that dialogue is how we become not so afraid or so different, or see the differences rather than what we have similar. You have to be able to see that we are all in this community, and while my experiences or my background or where I sit is different from you, that doesn't mean that it's dissimilar or that we can't find commonality. So in my mind, dialogue, reaching out, and having conversations with people you don't normally, that's how we have to get to there. It seems very small, but it's a big deal. A lot of people don't have communication anymore. A lot of people don't dialogue. A lot of people don't talk to each other. It's very common for us to hear complaints from neighbors who won't go across and say, hey, what's the issue? So in my mind, it's a simple thing, but it's a very powerful thing, which is talking.
Thanks.
Well stated. Kate, you interviewed very well. Thank you for being here. I
Thank you.
think that will wrap up this part, so yeah.
I had one more.
Okay?
So, if you're the city manager, do you have like a wish list? If money were no object, or you had a magic wand, do you have what dreams do you have for the city? Is that a fair enough question? I just think, we have so many issues, and it's nice to have, even if they're crazy, to have ideas that maybe someday we could make them happen.
Yeah, I think that there's always something to do. I mean, if you had millions of dollars, I mean, we've talked about pocket absorbers, ways to, minimize the wave action on the channel. Those things are millions of dollars that cause, you have to get multi-levels of permissions and sign-offs, and I guess I know it sounds kind of nerdy and geekish, but I've come to just love infrastructure and learning how things work, because it's the things that you don't see that make everything so smooth. And I guess if money was no object, and it sounds kind of weird, but just it was an unlimited budget, I'd put all the wires or all the telephone or the electric lines under the ground.
Yeah.
Just get them all down and just have beautiful skies.
Then we wouldn't have to worry about storms taking
That's
them
right.
down. Yeah. Okay.
So,
All right. Well, as a teacher, we always, if I would do this for the school if I could. It's just good to be a dreamer, I think.
sure.
Okay.
Yep, you've been doing city work too long if you're dreaming about wires. It's time to take a vacation. We'll get you some time away.
Thanks. Okay, anything else?
Anything else? Well done.
All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you, City Council. Put my mask back on.
Would you guys like to take 5 minutes and then come back? Or whatever your pleasure.
I'm fine.
Just go?
fine.
Everyone's ready to go? Okay. Well, we're in a unique situation. We have interviewed several candidates. We narrowed it down to 2. We now have 1. So it's ultimately up to this group to decide if you feel, we all know Kate, obviously. She's proven herself in a role. So we can move ahead with Kate. I would just need a motion to direct myself and Kim to enter into an agreement. We would bring that back at the next city council meeting. That's one option.
Can we make a motion with the door closed or no?
What's that?
Can we make a motion with the door closed?
That's-
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
we're live.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to move, to allow the mayor and Kate, or Kim, to move into negotiations with Kate Hosier for city manager.
Very good.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. How about discussion?
I feel real comfortable, and I second the motion because I know that Kim did a good job getting the word out. We, looked as far and wide as we could. We had 21 people apply. We had this group here and other, valuable locals help us weed that 21 down to 7. And then they were again vetted by another quality group and got us to 2. And so even though we're the one who had to withdraw, we had 2 quality people, and Kate has made it. And I think, I feel very comfortable with what the first 2 groups did and left us with Kate, and I think we're going to be great with Kate.
I've worked with Kate before city council, with rental stands and other contracts and stuff through the city, and Kate's always done an amazing job. Kate has always worked hard, and she always knows everything, and then when she doesn't, she always finds the answer, so I think it makes sense with Kate.
I agree with Jeff. I think Kim has done a great job getting us to this point. There's a reason why Kate rose to the top, and I can see from this evening's interview why that happened. And I think we've got a good opportunity here to go with Kate, and I'm excited to go forward.
Very good.
Ditto. I look forward to you guys working with her. As I said a while back, I think she deserves it. I think she's earned it. I think she'll do fine for us, and we can always remember that it's probably a year-by-year contract, so we're not married to that, I guess is proper word. So I'm comfortable moving forward with it as well.
All's quiet?
No comments?
In a perfect world, I would have liked to have sat here and had 2 or 3 other people to talk to and compare them. Having said that, I sat here as I listened to Kate, and I thought about her, and I tried to put down what I thought were some of the biggest strengths, and some of them I've already stated, but I think she's extremely smart. Smart counts anymore, especially in complicated issues. I think she understands the underlying issues in the city and the obvious ones. And that you can't buy by having somebody else come in from the outside. It's going to take them years to understand some of the underlying issues in town. I think she's an effective writer. I think she helped guided people to write grants, and I think that's really important. She said something I hadn't thought about, but she said, I'll take her word for it, that she's not afraid to ask questions if she doesn't know something. I have an expression, talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And I like to do that because I like people to have to explain what they think, and I think that's good that she said that. I think on the housing issue, I think she knows what the big issues are. And I watched her lead and Steve was on this, we were on that committee for Overton. And we had one person in particular go off, I thought, off the rails a bit, and start talking about something that wasn't what we were supposed to be doing at those couple of meetings. And she brought the group right back, and she said at the very outset, here's what we're supposed to be doing. And then she even called some of us ahead of time, and I asked her questions about it. And so she kept everybody on task. A lot of people can't do that, so I think that's really good. I only have one, and it's not going to make this group happy, and it's not my overriding concern. But I really thought, and this is not sour grapes or second, because I am going to support her 100%. But I do feel when it comes to conflict management, I think when Letitia and I were called in here, I'll say it 100 times over, that before we were ever called in here, before a lawyer got involved, she should have sat us down and said, here's the issue, before it ever got close to that. So my thought is, forget me, I'm a city council person, I'm expendable, I got another 1.5 years, and I'm not a paid employee. But how does she handle conflict with staff? Will she sit them down first or punish them first? And I felt that wasn't handled right at that time. Having said that, maybe she's learned from it, or maybe I'm just overly sensitive about the whole issue. But the overriding strengths that she has, I think we'd have a hard time finding anyone better. And I do think, like Brian, she could help to lead the city going forward. So she has my support.
Very good. All right, well, I will ditto all. All was well stated. I've worked with Kate. I've had an opportunity to work with her in different roles and capacities. She's always been an outstanding communicator. She's very easy to approach. She's willing to go out and, pound the pavement alone or with me when I ask. She stepped into a role at a remarkably tough time. I can't think of a much harder time to step into her role. She did not run, which was our first sign that we've got a good person. I mean, there's a lot going on right now, like it or not. So I think she's passed our test that we gave her, and I think she's still smiling, which is good. I think she'll get better. I think I think she'll get better, she'll get smarter, as she gets, different situations, so I'm confident. I mean, obviously, she grew up here, she knows the community, she knows our problems clearly, so I have a motion and a second. Yes, ma'am.
I did reach out to the leadership team to get their feedback as well, and I had some folks that responded. I don't know if it would be worth sharing some of their comments.
How about, and actually, we should probably allow public comment, shouldn't we, real quickly here on this one, before we, why don't we, 6370777, if you have any public comments, we have a motion and a second to enter into negotiations, myself and Kim, with Kate Hosier for our next city manager. While we wait for any phone calls, Kim, share.
So because this person would be leading the leadership team here at the city, I thought would be very helpful to get some feedback from the leadership team. And I had planned on doing the same thing for Tim. Today, I was going to be taking him around to the different buildings and having him do like meet and greets with some folks. But I did hear back from some of our folks here from the leadership team. And what I have is Kate is a great leader, not only to her team, but to the entire city. She is knowledgeable on what it takes to oversee the city's operations, both short and long term. Her open door policy is inviting to staff and community leaders. As a lifelong resident, or better known as a local, I believe she's truly invested in making South Haven the best place to live, do business, and prosper as a community. So that was from one person, and this was confidential, so they didn't have to share who it was from. The next one was, Kate has done an amazing job during her time as interim city manager. Her experience firsthand in the position, as well as her time as assistant manager and deputy assistant before that, has given her a wealth of knowledge and respect from the community and council. She has direct experience that makes her extremely valuable and would make it a seamless integration into the position full-time. The next one, I've been extremely impressed with Kate's performance during her time as interim city manager. In the last few months, she and I have worked on several complicated and sensitive employee relations issues. During these situations, she's been fair, but has stood her ground for what is right, even if it's unpopular with the employee. She will not be steamrolled. Kate took on the interim role at a very volatile time in our city. Between high water, a budget deficit, social unrest, and COVID, she has handled the pressure and mass amount of work with dignity, empathy, and a clear vision for what's best for the city. Our jobs can be very stressful at times, but Kate has done a great job making sure that we have support and to make it through these tough times. She makes this a fun job, and I'm grateful for that. And the last one, Kate is a proven leader capable of inspiring and motivating subordinates by demonstrating professional competence and by intelligent and compassionate treatment of subordinates. She understands worth and dignity of each individual, successfully pursues a follow-me leadership style. I can think of no one else to lead the city of South Haven into the future and to achieve the goals set forth by City Council.
Perfect, thank you for sharing. Any calls? Nothing. We have a motion and a second, as stated above, to enter into a negotiation agreement with Kate Hosier. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Unanimous. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.